Welcome to May's session of Strasbourg and the ENF-MENL Make Europe Great Again TV. Joining me today I have Gerolf Annemans, Vice President of the ENF and MEP for the Vlaams Belang, and also Marcus Pretzel, Vice President of the ENF and founder of the Blue Party for Germany. Welcome, gentlemen. We're going to talk about two subjects today. We're going to talk about the curious case and freedom of speech case of Tommy Robinson, and also what is going on in Italy. Well, over the weekend, on Friday, a freedom fighter, Tommy Robinson, was arrested, jailed, convicted, without access to his lawyer. Within 5 hours, he was put in prison. There was a media gagging order across the world, and the mainstream media didn't report it. Luckily, we knew what was going on because it was reported on mainstream media,
social media.
On social media. It was reported on social media. So we had an angle of what went on. Within 24 hours, we had hundreds, probably a couple of thousand people demonstrating in Downing Street. I was one of the people that called for that demonstration. There were quite ugly scenes at times outside the gates of Downing Street because of the absolute anger. And what it's done, this Tommy case, has tapped into something. It's a sort of zeitgeist of our times, really, that people are very, very angry that their freedom of speech is being shut down. And Tommy personifies this. We've got a group called Veterans for Britain, we've got the Football Lads Alliance, and they can tap into hundreds of thousands of people. And I know across the world, Tommy has been called for his release. So from Austria to the Netherlands, Geert Wilders has spoken very strongly in favour of Tommy. In Germany and Australia, he's been offered political asylum. And this has gone viral in the US and Canada as well. And luckily yesterday, the media ban for reporting on the Tommy case was lifted, but the actual case we can't speak about. But I suppose rather than talking about the Tommy case specifically, do you think it's symptomatic of what's actually happening in this place? Are you shocked at what's happening in the UK, which used to be a bastion of free speech and liberty and freedom? And Gerolf, what's your take on this? You've had experience of it.
Yes, exactly. We as Vlaams Belang, former party with Vlaams Blok, we were convicted for so-called racism. After 5 changes of laws and 2 changes of the constitution, they made a setting in which they could convict us of racism and could put the label criminal organization on the party. So we had to found a new party. I'm just telling this because somehow the regime, what we call the regime, being the artificial governing of the Western European countries in the last 20 years, had a symbol in the very artificial state Belgium. An artificial state, whether it is Belgium or the European Union, cannot deal with democracy and cannot be governed with democracy or with clear freedom of speech, openness and democracy. It should always be corrected somehow in a penal way or in a violent way. And so where we would have the feeling that with Robinson they crossed a red line, putting someone in jail for openly wanting to voice his criticism on Muslim migration, we see that it is a part of a general picture in the whole of Western Europe. Sadly, of course, now in Great Britain and in the United Kingdom, where we always thought freedom of speech would be an absolute value that would be respected by the regime. No, on the contrary, regimes like the one who are governing us now, they cannot clearly be democracies. And that's what we see now.
Yeah, well, that's the Flemish point of view. And what do you see from the German perspective, Marcus?
Well, from a German perspective, the UK has always been the country of free speech, of greater freedom. We always thought that in the UK there was a culture of freedom. People were longing for freedom. This is where we in Germany learned democracy and free speech from. And now we see that speech is taken away from the citizens in the UK. And this is an alarm signal, really. This is really frightening for me, because I always thought that the UK would be the last country where this could happen. I couldn't have thought of an incident like this 10 years ago in the UK. I could have thought of an incident like this in Germany, in France, in Spain, in Italy, almost everywhere in the world, but not in the UK. So this is frightening, because the symbol of free speech is taken away. It's not so much about Tommy Robinson himself. This is he's just one case out of many incidents during the last month in the UK. You can't report on a case. If you report on a case, you're taken to jail, and nobody else can report on your case. It's a ridiculous chain of forbidden things that we experience these days. And yeah, it's almost impossible to even explain to the public what is the source of this Tommy Robinson incident.
Yeah, and that's the point now. Especially with social media, you just can't shut down this and slapping a D notice on as the government did. And it's a very dangerous situation where you have the government controlling the police and the judiciary and saying you will be our weapons against free speech. And that's what people don't understand, because this stuff goes viral on social media, and we could just direct thousands of people to Downing Street. Next Saturday there's another march up in Manchester in the north of England, which has been organised for the Veterans Against Terrorism and also the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. These people are tapping into hundreds of thousands of people, and it's almost like Brexit, and it's what's happened in Italy and Germany and across our countries, whereas this quiet, what was very quiet and underground rejection of totalitarianism, which goes on in this place, which goes on in our parliaments, and you see this quiet revolution going on. It's quite interesting, and it's frightening at the same time, but I think actually, we might just win. Anyway, guys.
Be prudent, because we only last week we received here in our commissions or in a committee, small sala, we had the joy to meet Zuckerberg,
yes,
where we as ENF group introduced the subject of not only the way social media try to hide certain subjects, but where there is a real censorship on what is distributed on social media. So talk with two words and be very prudent about social media, because even they are not an entirely free space anymore.
No, they're not, because they have been targeted by the European Union, and legislation will come in. But all the time, new platforms are springing up. We're not going to have to just rely on Facebook, who shut down a few friends of mine last week. Luckily, they've got the platform again. I met very, very nice young people dedicated to freedom of speech, who I met on Saturday in Whitehall, and they had been kicked off Twitter. Just for saying something quite innocuous.
It started with Madame Merkel in Germany, who set up laws that severely attack Facebook and others with penalties I have never heard of, as they are. So we're not safe even there.
No, well, hopefully Mrs. Merkel's days are numbered.
Okay.
Right, moving on to Italy.
We're working on that.
You certainly are, and I saw some demonstrations at the weekend in Germany, and good luck to them. Moving on to Italy, obviously our friend and Vice President, or former Vice President of the ENF and our group, Matteo Salvini. We all wanted him to become Prime Minister. Then he was nominated as Interior Minister. And then over the weekend, Mattarella, who is a socialist president, unelected, decided that he would not allow Matteo and his partners in the Five Star Movement to form a government. Instead, they've appointed an IMF dictator to run the country until people can vote the right way. And then yesterday we saw the Commissioner Oettinger said the Italians will vote the right way because the markets will tell them to do this. Within minutes, this tweet was taken down, but luckily we can actually grab this. And then he was backtracking. But isn't that just symptomatic of what we were saying before about freedom of speech and what people think and feel and worry about? And they voted in Matteo and his friends, the Five Star Movement. Let's see what happens in September. But, you know, there is this quiet revolution going on. I mean, what are your thoughts on Italy at the moment, Marcus?
Well, first of all, we're happy that our political enemies, like Günther Oettinger, somehow are not smart enough to lie all the time. Sometimes they're honest, happy. We should be happy they are sometimes, at least. No, Italy is a strange case as well. We have seen that the Italian president, whose duty is to set in place a government which has a majority in both the Senate and the Parliament. He's, by the Italian constitution, not allowed to pick the government by himself and to decide whether a minister is a good minister or a bad minister for the country. That is the decision of those who are set in place by their voters. And the minister that is rejected by Mr. Mattarella was a minister in Italy before. He was a minister in 93 to 94. He was industry minister. And now this minister has made up his mind, changed his views on the euro. He's one of those who was responsible to install the euro in Italy. So he knows what he's talking about. And now, since he's made up his mind and changed it, it's impossible for him to be a minister in Italy. That he's been before and he's done a good job. Nobody ever complained before. But now Mr. Mattarella knows this guy can't be a minister, a representative of the Italian people. This is a scandal. This is a huge scandal. And there's, in Germany, we see the media, they are so happy about what Mattarella did. They think he's brave. He's so brave, he didn't even respect the democratic vote of the Italian people.
Yeah, and
Sad
that sums it up. And what we've seen over the past few days is a huge surge of Italian voters now going to our friends in the Five Star Movement, and also our better friends in the League.
I saw an article this morning in the Wall Street Journal entitling, and the title was "The winner is Salvini." Anyhow,
Absolutely.
Whatever happens, Italy is one of the several signs where we see, I was speaking about Belgium being an artificial state, the European Union is an artificial state also, ignoring the signs. And the bills are coming in. What the first or the most spectacular bill was, of course, the Brexit.
Yeah.
But they ignored it and they went into their direction, ignoring the sign of the Brexit. You would have expected that all of a sudden here in this house there could fall down some wise decision to see, okay, Brexit, how are we going to slow down a bit, because the sign is clear, we should slow down. The contrary happened. They went faster than ever in the same direction. And the next bill that is coming in now is actually Italy. It is impossible to keep the euro stable without excluding democracy in Italy. Italy is a special economic case. They always knew it was a special economic case, that the Italians had a special way of dealing with their economy. In their own way, they dealt with their economy, and the euro forbid to deal with their economy their way. And that is the meaning of the euro, is stop being yourself. And Italy and the Italian economy is going to challenge that idea. So if the European Union lived after Brexit, it will not live after Italy.
And being shackled by the euro and this place, so what effectively that means is that if a disaster happens in Italy, like an earthquake or an avalanche, or they need more money for their disabled, they have to come with a begging bowl to this place, and that's totally unacceptable.
Well, it's not only a thing of the begging bowl, it's actually, can they govern their economy their way? We can say it is not a German way. Of course it is not a German way or a Flemish way to deal with economy, but it's their way. Only the euro forbids to deal with things their way. They can't devaluate their currency. They can't flexibly take part in the European economy. The idea that we have one currency obliges us to say that we are all going to become Germans. And that will not happen, not with Italians, not with Greeks, not with Spanish. And that is the artificial idea that has been religiously cherished here, and that should fall now with what is happening in Italy.
Yeah, I think the whole foundations of this place is under threat. In September we have the Swedish elections, where our friends the Swedish Democrats may become the largest party. We've got the European elections next year, where we can see our friends near Dexia possibly getting quite a number of MEPs, very Eurosceptic, wants to come out of the euro. We see what's happening in here with Poland and Hungary, and there you've got two of the top 5 economies, Britain and Italy, that has shaken this place to its core roots. It's interesting times. Well,
no doubt.
Tommy Robinson, if you're watching this, we support you. Across the ENF group, across Flanders, across Germany, and as you know, you've had masses of support here. We wish you well. We're trying our hardest to get you out of prison. Free Tommy Robinson.